This is not a drill. This is not hyperbole. What we just witnessed on SmackDown is the most disgusting, most brutal, most absolutely vicious assault in WWE history, and Brock Lesnar should be arrested. Not suspended. Not fined. Arrested for what he just did to Jacob Fatu. That wasn't a wrestling attack, that was attempted murder. That was a man deliberately trying to end another human being's career and possibly cripple them for life. Jacob Fatu's leg is shattered. Medical personnel rushed to the ring. EMTs immediately called for a stretcher. The crowd went from cheering to complete silence when they realized this wasn't part of the show, this was real. This was actual bones breaking. This was a man's livelihood being destroyed right before our eyes. And Brock Lesnar stood there with that sick smile on his face like he was proud of what he just did. I am shaking with rage right now. My hands are literally trembling as I record this because what Brock Lesnar did crosses every single line that exists in professional wrestling. This isn't keeping it real or being a dangerous heel, this is criminal assault. This is a 300-pound monster using his legitimate combat skills to deliberately injure someone in a way that could end their career permanently. And where was security? Where were the referees? Where was anyone to stop this before it got to the point where Jacob Fatu's leg was bent at an angle that legs should never bend? The sound of that bone snapping echoed through the arena. Commentary went dead silent. Michael Cole's voice was shaking when he said, "This has gone too far." Yeah, Michael, you think? It went too far about 3 attacks ago. Let me describe what happened for those who haven't seen it yet, and warning, this is absolutely brutal to even talk about. Jacob Fatu was in the ring cutting a promo about the bloodline when Brock Lesnar's music hit. Now, we all know Lesnar and Fatu have had tensions, we know there's been a building rivalry, but nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared us for what Lesnar was about to do. Lesnar charged the ring like a man possessed. Not like a wrestler making an entrance, like a predator hunting prey. Jacob Fatu immediately got into a fighting stance because he's a warrior, he's not backing down from anyone. The two men started brawling and honestly, it was pretty even at first. Fatu was holding his own, landing some devastating strikes, showing why he's one of the most dangerous men in WWE. But then Lesnar changed tactics. Instead of trying to overpower Fatu with strikes, he went for an amateur wrestling takedown, which makes sense given Lesnar's NCAA championship background and UFC experience. He took Fatu down to the mat, and that's when everything went wrong. That's when this stopped being a wrestling segment and became something truly horrifying. Lesnar immediately went for Fatu's left leg. He grabbed it, he twisted it, and he started working it over with a level of aggression that was clearly designed to injure, not just to win a match. This wasn't a heel working over a body part for storyline purposes, this was deliberate, calculated destruction. You could see it in Lesnar's eyes. You could see the intent to cause real harm. Jacob Fatu was screaming. Not selling, not performing, screaming in legitimate agony. He was trying to fight back, trying to kick Lesnar off with his free leg, but Lesnar is 286 pounds of pure muscle with legitimate MMA training. Once he had that leg isolated, Fatu was in serious trouble. And then Lesnar applied what looked like a modified heel hook, a submission move that is banned in many combat sports because of how dangerous it is. A heel hook doesn't just hurt, it destroys. It tears ligaments, it breaks bones, it causes the kind of damage that requires surgery to fix. And Lesnar cranked on it with everything he had. The referee was screaming at Lesnar to release the hold. Other referees ran down to the ring. Security tried to intervene but Lesnar just shoved them off like they were children. He was in his zone, completely focused on destroying Jacob Fatu's leg, and nothing was going to stop him until he accomplished his goal. We heard the snap. The entire arena heard it. That sickening sound of bone breaking that will haunt everyone who was there live for the rest of their lives. Jacob Fatu's scream became something primal, something beyond pain. It was the sound of a man realizing his career might be over. It was the sound of genuine trauma happening in real time. And even after that sound, even after it was obvious that serious damage had been done, Lesnar held on for another 5 seconds. 5 seconds of additional torque on an already broken leg. 5 seconds of unnecessary, excessive brutality that proved this wasn't about sending a message, this was about causing maximum harm. When Lesnar finally released the hold, Jacob Fatu's leg was visibly wrong. I'm not a doctor, but even through the TV screen you could see that his leg was bent in a way that defied human anatomy. Medical personnel immediately rushed in and you could see the concern on their faces. These are professionals who have seen thousands of wrestling injuries, and even they looked shaken by what they were seeing. Lesnar didn't leave the ring right away. He stood there, looking down at what he'd done, and the expression on his face was something between satisfaction and complete indifference. No remorse. No concern. Just cold, calculating acknowledgement that he'd accomplished what he set out to do. And that is what makes this so much worse than a typical wrestling attack. The Bloodline members started running down to the ring, Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, all coming to check on their fallen family member. And you know what Lesnar did? He laughed. He laughed at their concern. He laughed at Jacob Fatu's agony. He laughed as he casually walked up the ramp while medical personnel were frantically trying to stabilize Fatu's shattered leg. SmackDown went to an unscheduled commercial break. You know it's serious when they cut to commercial in the middle of something like this. When they came back, the ring was surrounded by medical staff. They had Jacob Fatu on a stretcher with his leg completely immobilized. You could see his face, contorted in pain, tears streaming down, and these weren't character tears, these were real human tears from someone in genuine agony. The crowd was chanting, "We want Lesnar," but not in support, in outrage. They wanted him to come back out so they could express their disgust. They wanted someone to hold him accountable. But Lesnar was already gone, probably sitting in his private locker room without a care in the world while Jacob Fatu was being loaded into an ambulance. Social media exploded immediately. Twitter trends were dominated by this incident. Hashtag Arrest Brock Lesnar started trending worldwide within minutes. Hashtag Pray for Jacob Fatu was right behind it. Wrestling journalists who usually maintain some professional distance were expressing genuine shock and anger. This transcended the usual work or shoot speculation. Everyone could see this was real. And now we're getting reports from the hospital. Jacob Fatu has been taken for emergency x-rays and possibly emergency surgery. Initial reports suggest a compound fracture of the tibia and fibula. That means the bone didn't just break, it broke through the skin. That's the kind of injury that requires pins, rods, extensive surgery, and months of rehabilitation. That's career-threatening. That's life-altering. Let me put this in perspective for people who might not understand the severity. A compound fracture of the leg is one of the worst injuries you can have in combat sports or wrestling. We're talking 6 to 9 months minimum recovery time, and that's if everything goes perfectly. We're talking multiple surgeries. We're talking the possibility that Jacob Fatu might never wrestle at the same level again. This is a man in his prime. This is someone who just joined WWE and was being built as a monster. This is a member of the legendary Naomi family with unlimited potential. And Brock Lesnar just potentially ended all of that because of what? Ego? A desire to prove he's still the baddest man in WWE? Jealousy that the bloodline gets so much attention? There is no justification for this. None. I don't care what the storyline explanation is going to be. I don't care if they reveal that Fatu did something to provoke Lesnar. There is nothing that makes it okay to deliberately break someone's leg in this manner. This goes beyond wrestling, beyond entertainment, beyond anything that should be acceptable in a professional environment. WWE needs to take immediate action. Brock Lesnar should be stripped of any titles or opportunities he has. He should be suspended indefinitely pending a full investigation. Honestly, he should be fired and banned from every WWE facility. What he did wasn't wrestling, it was assault and battery. In any other workplace, the police would already be involved. And before the Lesnar apologists come out of the woodwork with "he's just playing a character" or "this is just good heel work," stop it. Just stop. There's a difference between being a convincing villain and actually injuring someone. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the biggest badass in WWE history and he never deliberately tried to end someone's career. The Undertaker was the most intimidating presence in wrestling for 30 years and he never crossed the line into legitimate assault. Brock Lesnar has a history of being too stiff, too aggressive, too willing to blur the line between performance and reality. Remember when he busted open Randy Orton with those elbow strikes? Remember when he injured John Cena with repeated punches? Remember all the times he's been accused of being too rough with opponents? This isn't new behavior, this is a pattern. And WWE has enabled it by never holding him accountable. Well, guess what? You can't ignore it anymore. You can't sweep this under the rug. Jacob Fatu's broken leg is proof that Brock Lesnar is out of control. It's proof that he's dangerous in the worst possible way. It's proof that WWE needs to choose between protecting their performers and protecting one guy who thinks he's above the rules. The locker room has to be in shock right now. Everyone backstage just watched one of their colleagues get his leg deliberately broken. How are they supposed to feel safe working with Brock Lesnar after this? How are they supposed to trust that WWE will protect them if Lesnar decides he doesn't like them? The answer is they can't. WWE has created a toxic, dangerous environment by allowing Lesnar to operate without consequences. Think about the Bloodline's response too. Solo Sikoa, Roman Reigns when he finds out, the entire Anoa'i family, they're going to want revenge. Not wrestling revenge, real revenge. Brock Lesnar just declared war on one of the most powerful families in wrestling history. He just made enemies of people who have connections throughout the entire industry. This isn't going to end with a match at a pay-per-view, this is going to be an ongoing blood feud that could get even more people hurt. And what about Jacob Fatu's family? His wife, his children, his parents, they all just watched him get seriously injured on live television. They're sitting in a hospital right now, worried about whether he'll ever walk normally again, whether he'll ever be able to support his family through wrestling again. That's real pain. That's real trauma. That's beyond entertainment. The medical update just came through. Jacob Fatu is indeed going into emergency surgery. The fracture was so severe that they can't wait. They need to operate immediately to set the bones and prevent further damage. He's going to have rods and pins inserted into his leg. He's going to have a long, painful recovery ahead of him. All because Brock Lesnar decided to be a monster in the worst possible way. WWE stock should tank over this. Sponsors should be pulling out. Advertisers should be demanding answers about how this was allowed to happen. This is the kind of incident that brings unwanted mainstream attention to wrestling. News outlets are going to cover this as WWE wrestlers seriously injured in brutal attack, and it's going to make the entire company look bad. Paul Heyman needs to answer for this too. He's Lesnar's advocate, his manager, his mouthpiece. If he knew Lesnar was planning something like this, he's complicit. If he didn't know and can't control his client, then what good is he? Either way, Heyman has some explaining to do. You can't just shrug and say that's Brock being Brock when Brock being Brock results in someone's leg being shattered. I want to hear from Adam Pearce. I want to hear from Nick Aldis. I want to hear from Triple H. What are they going to do about this? How are they going to handle the fact that one of their contracted performers just committed assault on live television? Are there going to be actual consequences, or is this going to be swept under the rug like everything else Lesnar does? The wrestling world is united in outrage right now. AEW wrestlers are tweeting their support for Jacob Fatu. Independent wrestlers are expressing shock. Retired legends are calling for Lesnar to be held accountable. This has transcended company loyalty. This is the entire wrestling community recognizing that what happened was wrong and cannot be tolerated. This is WrestlingNewsCC, and I am absolutely disgusted by what we just witnessed. Drop your comments below, but be respectful. Jacob Fatu is a real human being dealing with a real injury right now. Share this video because WWE needs to see that we're not going to just accept this kind of violence. We need answers. We need action. We need justice for Jacob Fatu. Brock Lesnar crossed every line tonight, and there has to be consequences. This cannot stand.